Welcome to the number 15 team in this deep dive series, talking about the Memphis Grizzlies, the first number 9 seed to win a playoff game in the NBA. The young upstart Memphis Grizzlies, led by none other than Ja Morant, and a whole cast of characters that, interestingly enough, got good at all the wrong spots. They tried to bring in Justice Winslow. He didn't work out. It was a low risk but very high reward move. He has the potential to be something great, but is he that good? No. Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark took major steps back. Ja himself did not have a great season, but on the flip side, Dylan Brooks and Kyle Anderson had career years. They absolutely balled out. But this team is coming in at 38 and 34 last year, 9th in the Western Conference, 17th in the power rankings that I use. I do refer to a old Bleacher Report, their final power rankings of the year, so it's not always the most reliable because Bleacher Report is worse than my asshole, but I still use them, and I think they're severely underrating this team, especially underrating the star that is Ja Morant. Talking about this offseason, and it's been kind of confusing. They lost Jonas Valanciunas, they lost Grayson Allen, they brought in Steven Adams, Jarrett Culver, Zaire Williams, just a little bit weird. If you look back, they got Steven Adams for Jonas Valanciunas, so downgrade at the 5. They moved up 7 spots into the draft to the top 10 selection, which is great in the abstract. Top 10 guys are very hard to come across in the NBA. And then they draft a guy who is projected mid to late first round, who is going to need years and years of development before he offers you anything. And once he gets to his potential, it's probably Dylan Brooks 2.0. Just a little curious. And they flipped what they received into Santi Aldama, not much, Chris Dunn, defensive stopper, Carson Edwards, Summer League legend, Daniel Oturo, nothing burger, Sam Merrill, why, and Jarrett Culver, a reclamation project at best, all while losing one of their top tier shooters in Grayson Allen as well. I gotta say, this offseason has been a bit of a head scratcher for me. Now, if Zaire turns out to be good, or Jarrett Culver learns how to play basketball, maybe this trade is a win for them. They've had a successful offseason. The one saving grace that I've been hearing Memphis Grizzlies experts talk about is that Jonas Valanciunas was going to walk regardless of what happens in this season, or at the very least command $20 million a year, and him not being on the Ja Morant timeline whatsoever, there's some sense to get value from him after arguably his best season rather than keep him for a year. He's already 29, and either lose him for nothing or sign him to a deal that just doesn't match what the Grizzlies are trying to do. Now, my hope down the road for this is it means Jaren Jackson Jr. plays the 5. This is the modern NBA, 5 out, stretch the floor, and Jaren Jackson Jr. has the height, he has the strength to play the center position in the modern NBA, and is a significant upgrade over Steven Adams if they do give him that chance. Also on this roster, we're going to have at least 3 or 4 players are going to be cut. There are 19 players on the active roster, and they don't have any two-way spots available after Yves Pons came in undrafted. So this whole roster isn't what we're going to see this upcoming season. They're going to need to consolidate some of the players that they drafted. And I'm not even going to bother with Marc Gasol. He just came here for a salary dump, flipping Wang Jalen for a second-round pick, essentially. Good on you, Mark. Congratulations on winning the ring in Toronto. Former Defensive Player of the Year. Hell of a career for a chubby guy. Maybe even a Hall of Fame candidate. That's just another debate for another day. But let's talk about this point guard room where I am an absolute truther of Ja Morant. I am buying all the stock that I can on him, coming in at number 8, and that is a little bit high if you think about how good Ja Morant is, in my opinion. But I think he's elite. I think he's already one of the best of the game, obviously improving. He's only going into his 3rd season, and especially using the point guard term broadly the way we do these days, it's just so stacked. So the difference between 3 through 9, 3 through 10 at the point guard rank in today's NBA isn't very much. And he'd be going even higher if Trae Young didn't go fucking ballistic in the playoffs and lead his team to the Eastern Conference Finals while upsetting the Knicks and the Sixers and giving the Milwaukee Bucks a run for their money. As for Ja Morant, I'm always going to be traumatized by Derrick Rose, so whenever I see freak athletic guards who make their money by jumping in the air doing crazy things, being the human highlight reel 2.0, I'm going to be a little worried and I'm going to be a little bit in awe every single night that he plays. Now, Ja Morant has a mean floater game and is a really solid finisher. I love his vision when he's slashing. He's got grace in the paint. He's got a really good handle. And his ability to hang in the air and contort his body into these weird angles while still making his layups is just remarkable. Now, we do need some improvement from 3. He only shot 30.3% last year from the 3-point line. He's a streaky shooter from 3, and he has a really, we'll call it, imperfect shot form. It's really slow, and I think his whole motion is what throws him off. He needs to speed it up, compact his motion a little bit, not dip his knees so much, and I think if he speeds up his motion with repetition, it's going to be a lot better than what he has right now. Team sagged off of him, and he made them pay for it to some extent, but it's just his 3 isn't good enough yet. It's not starting caliber point guard in the NBA yet, especially for an elite guy like him. He can also get out of control while driving into the paint, slashing, maneuvering. He's still just figuring out his game. He's so young, and that's what you have to think about when you're grading this guy. I couldn't believe how many people were talking about, oh man, John Morant didn't have that sophomore year that we were looking for. We thought he was going to be the best point guard ever. The dude is like 20, 21 years old. Fucking calm down. He's going into year 3. Not everybody has this Luka Doncic second year trajectory where they're all of a sudden the best player ever made on the cover of fucking NBA 2K, all right? Everybody's growth and path to being great is different. I think John Morant, in a COVID-less distraction year to some extent, with more experience with his coach and the system, is going to ball out this season and surprise these haters that I've been hearing about who don't like him in their fantasy leagues. And despite his quote-unquote down year, he finished the season very strong, took the Grizzlies to the playoffs, avenged a loss against Golden State that could have gotten them the 8 seed, then beat the Dubs to win the 8 seed in the playoffs, then stole a game off the number 1 seeded best team in the NBA, Utah Jazz, and despite dropping 4 in a row, there were still highly competitive games. He's the undisputed leader of the team, and you love to see that from your young franchise cornerstone star. There's no qualms about him, no qualms about his leadership. It's not saying he has a bad work ethic, wanting a trade out of his city. This is going perfectly. But John Morant is the answer. I'm so in on him, and I think he's going to push this team to even greater heights depending on what they surround him with. Moving on to the backup point guard position, Tyus Jones is one of the lower tier of the backup point guards, but he's incredibly safe with the ball. He's a career 0.7 turnovers per game while still giving you 3.4 assists. I think he's often in the running for highest assist to turnover ratio. Just a smart player. He struggles to finish though, hence his low free throw rate. He only shoots 0.6 free throws a game like last season, but he's a hard worker, a smart guy, gets his teammates the ball and pushes the pace. He is undersized, a serious mismatch on defense, which is why he doesn't come in for the clutch fourth quarter moments, but he's still a very good player and a good enough backup to get the job done. Moving on to Chris Dunn at point guard 3, they brought him in. He only played 4 games last year, so it's yet to be seen how good is he. Obviously, a former number 5 overall pick, he's been significantly depressing people, hasn't lived up to the expectations, but he still is a very good player, has a 6'9" wingspan, nice, and is a near all NBA defensive guard. He can't shoot and he can't play make that well, but he does put the clamps on the other guy's defense, comes in as a specialist if you need him to. Moving on to the wing position, and initially after the Jonas Valanciunas trade, I had them running a John Morant, Dillon Brooks, Desmond Bane, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 lineup. Maybe flip in Zaire Williams for Desmond Bane, but seeing the current depth charts and how traditional the Grizzlies played last season, I fear Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't going to step out to the 5 and they're going to run a double big lineup. So I had to modify the rankings. Everything in the last video might be slightly out of order by 1 or 2 spots because I had to rearrange this positioning, and then there's trades and cuts of players, etc. But Dillon Brooks is going to be the shooting guard. He stepped into the spotlight in the play-in tournament last season, basically played full court ball deny on Steph, absolutely shut down Luka Doncic. Basically, whoever was your other team's best player, he was going to pick that man up and make it difficult for him to play the game. And what a breakout couple of years he's had these last 2 seasons. Last year, he got you 16, 3, and 2. This year, he gave you 17, 3, and 2 and bumped his usage rate up to 25, 26. He's just still not an efficient player. Analytics don't like him, but I can tell you he's a handful on defense, and he won't exactly take away your best player because this is the modern NBA. You just make it tough for them to score, tough for them to get to their spot. He's a little foul-y as are most elite defenders, and he's always bordering that line of making a legal play while still defending at a high level. But he really came on offensively on his own. He's able to create his own shot. It's not at a great conversion rate right now, but it's good enough to run Ja off ball for a few possessions a game. He can spot up in 3. He drives okay. He can make the occasional pass. He's kind of offensively a jack of all trades, master of none guy. And then on defense, he plays the best defense you possibly can in today's NBA. He's not elite by any stretch, but he's a good 3rd or 4th option on offense while being the primary defender. And he's still incredibly young, only 25, which means he still has years to get better. He hasn't even touched his prime yet. He does need to get more consistent. I understand that. That means bump the 3-point percentage up. That means improve your shot selection. You don't need to take max elevation fall away long 2s quite so much. And just one note on his shooting form, I really hate how early he takes his left hand off the ball when he shoots, flailing it out before he's even got the ball halfway up through its motion. But at this point, I don't want to break his shot form like they did Brandon Clark's. Moving on to slow-mo himself, Kyle Anderson coming in at the 13th ranking, and despite having the slowest shooting motion in the history of basketball and an awkward hitch that psychs out players at the free throw line, he shot pretty well. He hit his free throws, and whenever he had time to do his whole shooting motion with a hitch, it would go in at a pretty good clip. He reads passing lanes very well. He averaged 2.3 deflections a game and 1.2 steals last season. He gives the team a little point forward stretches to give Ja a rest, had a career high in assists last season, and is a very good passer himself. And he's just a smart player overall. He has so many veteran tricks to get around defenders or stay in front of his man despite being so slow. And he was one of the most improved player candidates last season, finally healthy, finally got a role where he's able to play his game. I think he would be the perfect guy if the Grizzlies are able to get an elite all-star caliber wing to run the twos and run that kind of Manu Ginobili role. Lastly, Jaren Jackson Jr., where they're going to come in at 12th in the power forward rankings. I really hope I'm wrong about him being in the 4. At least at some point in the season, they just move him to the 5, say, screw it, you're going to be at the center. We're going to play small-ish ball. We're going to get 3 wings, Ja Morant and you. But he looked okay coming back from tearing up his knee in the bubble. I want a step-up year from him now that Ja has arrived. He still has his fouling issues. He's been first, third, and third in the league in fouls since coming into the league. And he can't really do anything when he gets the ball. He's just kind of a spot-up shooter at this point. But he still is all potential. What is he going to be? What does he have the capacity to elevate his game to? I'm just worried he's going to become more Miles Turner than Chris Bosh. He did struggle a bit last season, but that's kind of to be expected for a guy who sat out the large portion of the year dealing with a horrid knee injury. His points are down, field goal percentage was down, 3-point percentage tremendously down to 28%, which is unacceptable. His win shares dropped to almost 0, and the Grizzlies are coming up on his extension soon. I think they're just waiting to see 3 things. 1, stay healthy for the majority of the season. 2, have your shooting recover to your pre-bubble knee injuries. And 3, inch closer to that all-star potential rather than staying at the same caliber player or getting worse. It's been 3 years, and while it was impressive in his rookie season, his growth has just kind of stagnated. Moving on to the center position where they're going to come in very low at 27th. Now, I will say I had Jaren Jackson Jr. as the 6th highest rated center in my power rankings before I realized that he was going to play the 4 for them. That's just how highly I think of Jaren Jackson Jr., kind of how low I am on Steven Adams at this point in his career, and what I think is going to make this team so much better once they finally make the smart move and transition to that smaller roster. Now, if Steven Adams does start instead of running JJJ at the 5, I think the trade with the Pelicans, A, was a downgrade at the center position, and B, they very clearly lost this trade, so you better hope that Zaire Williams balls out. Now, I like Steven Adams. He was a fan favorite everywhere he goes. He's nice to a fault, incredibly professional, incredibly respectful. His game is just very passive. He plays like a gentle giant with a heart of gold. He doesn't attack in the paint. He doesn't attack in the post. You've seen the clips of him being able to shoot 3, post up, and ball out with Evan Mobley, but when it's in the game, all he does is play the roll man and give you some floaters, I guess. His numbers were down last year in New Orleans, partly because New Orleans was a dumpster fire, and partly because he wasn't able to get as many easy follow-the-slasher dunks without playing alongside Russell Westbrook. But he still is a good defender. He slowed down a little bit defensively, but I think he's going to be better than Jonas Valanciunas was. He's a huge man, 7 feet tall, 250 pounds, wide shoulders. He's going to be able to stop anybody in the paint that has that bigger frame that Xavier Tillman is not going to be able to handle. The problem is he just doesn't give you much offensively unless, I don't know, Taylor Jenkins unlocks him and has him shooting 3s in the corner. Probably unlikely, but someone who does shoot the 3 is Xavier Tillman, that second center that they have. Another one of those great 6'8", 6'9" centers taken in last year's draft. He's great energy, showed signs of being able to shoot the 3 at 34% last season on 1.1 attempts a game in 18 minutes. Bumped that up to his per 36. He's giving you a little over 2 threes a game. He can score. He can pass. He played well in the summer league with Desmond Bane. Good defender for his size. He made his share of rookie mistakes, which is, to be expected, but he was a very promising, very bright spot for this Memphis Grizzlies team, especially with the regression of Brandon Clark. Moving on to their center 3 position, which is really up in the air. They picked up the last pick of the first round, Santi Aldama. They have Killian Tilly out there on a 2-way contract. Santi Aldama could go down to 2-way. I think that's to be expected. He may flip-flop in this third big man role with Killian. He's basically a big, skinny white guy who can shoot the 3, kind of Frank Kaminsky-esque. His stats look elite. You look at his 21 points, 10 rebounds, 28.5 PER, and almost 37% from the 3-point line. You're like, oh my God, this guy is incredible. But his competition was awful. Some of the teams they played were the Lafayette Leopards, the Bucknell Bison, the Colgate Raiders, no, not the toothpaste, and the Holy Cross Crusaders. So I'll acknowledge that he has some 3-point potential talent, but he doesn't give you much else. Killian Tilly is a interesting player. He can shoot the 3 a little bit as well. Shot 30% last year. Defend to some extent. He kind of is a poor man's Xavier Tillman. He's undersized at 6'9", shoots the three, defends, is a good energy guy, but just not very talented. Basically everything Xavier Tillman does, but a lot worse. Moving on to their bench ranking, where they're going to come in at 6th. They had a very deep roster last season, which is part of their success. Number 1, of course, is DeAnthony Melton, who might even be a starter if they move JJJ to the 5. He turned himself into a sharpshooter. He's a decent defender. His issue is that he's more of a 2, but he's undersized at 6 feet. He's an underrated guy. He just struggled with a little injury last season and got pushed behind Grayson Allen, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones. Just wasn't able to etch out a spot in the roster for Taylor Jenkins. Fantasy guys are absolutely all in on DeAnthony, and they're hoping that he gets a minutes bump into the high 20s. Some even want him to play 30 minutes a game in the fourth quarter's clutch moments and be that perfect partner alongside John Morant. I'm not sure if I'm that high on him. I understand he shoots the 3 at a good clip, and that's almost all that matters to fantasy, but he's a decent player nonetheless and is going to be good off the bench for them. Now let's talk about Zaire Williams. Oof. Major reach on Zaire. Undisputed. Everybody says that. Everybody uses polite words like, I was so shocked when they took him. It was because he wasn't expected to go anywhere near top 10. And now I was a lot higher than most other experts on him and had him listed at 16th on my big board. And that's with a disclaimer that he had an awful year last season, but I think he can get better. Most mock drafts had him in the late 20s or even in the second round. So going top 10 with him, also while trading your starting center away, really knocks the overall results of that trade down. You really didn't need to move up 7 spots and take on bad contracts and give up your starting center just to not get a top 10 pick or acquire future draft capital. Now, I understand they're drafting Zaire Williams with the upside in mind. I personally think James Bouknight or Kai Jones have even more upside than him, especially James Bouknight, who was taken 1 pick later. A John Morant, James Bouknight, Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson Jr. lineup sounds absolutely lethal to me now and in 5 years. You probably could have traded one of your future first-round picks for pick, 21 for the Knicks, because they traded all their picks away, and taken Zaire Williams there as well. Basically, what I'm saying is at this point, you better hope Zaire balls out, because this can be a big swing and miss for your franchise. Last year, he was horrible at Stanford. He shot 37% from the field, 29% from the three-point line, had a horrible 2.2 assist to 2.9 turnover ratio, and offered Stanford next to nothing. But he was also their only good player. Maybe Oscar da Silva, who's currently in the German league, would be a decent player, you can argue, but obviously he's not an NBA caliber player. The bright spot is he's not going to need to be a creator on this team. There's going to be a lot less offensive burden on his shoulders, which may free him up to just play his game. And I understand the argument. He is the highest upside wing player if you're judging him based on high school tape, I guess. My blurb for him is Zaire is an interesting prospect. You're banking on the top 10 talent from his high school class, so less so his freshman year game. He shot awful from the field, but has a solid free throw percentage and form looks good enough. In fact, his difficult contested shot selection is what appears to be the worst thing about his shooting. He has a beautiful looking dribble pull-up jumper from the elbow, kind of Devin Booker-esque, and has some dribble handles while he isn't fumbling the ball embarrassingly. He had some issues driving due to his slow first step and complete lack of any strength whatsoever. Any contact to Zaire would just knock him back a few feet. He also had some ugly looking rookie turnovers that would make some head scratching passes while simultaneously throwing beautiful darts. His defense was good enough when he wanted to try. He has good foot speed, great length, and a quality vertical that can contest shots. He just didn't really care much though, would often get lost ball watching or making lazy 3-point closeouts, just an overall lackluster effort guarding the perimeter despite his natural skill set. Zaire is frustrating that if he gave a fuck, he'd be a 5-star prospect. He just needs somebody to get him to completely focus and concentrate on both ends of the floor night in and night out. He'll need to shoot better, he's going to have to put on muscle to compete. There's a minor out to give in that he had a bike accident early in the year at Stanford that put his leg in a brace for the first few games, and he had several deaths in the family to cope with COVID. So, like I said, he definitely struggled last season, but you're banking on his top 10 high school talent that ranked him number 7 in this 2020 class. Moving on to Brandon Clark, and I think everybody likes Brandon Clark. He's a great high-energy guy, an athletic 4 with major hops. His shot just disappeared last season. He seriously fell out of the rotation because of this, and it appears that his good shooting on his rookie year was the anomaly instead of him just having one bad off year. His jump shot looks absolutely horrible. I've looked at some tape and his new shot, he has his elbows tucked in horribly. He holds the ball almost below his face when he begins his jump shot, holds it, and has this real ugly looking hitch before he actually elevates and shoots the ball. Compared to his rookie season where he shot almost like a normal human being. He still had that hitch, but it was much smaller, much less exaggerated. I don't know what happened. I don't know if this was Brandon Clark initiated or this was the Memphis Grizzlies staff saying this is how you should shoot the ball, but Absolutely horrible regression from his shot form. Now, he can still contribute being an active defender and fighting for rebounds. He's just also not very good in the paint. He also lost his ability to shoot floaters while his 3-point percentage dropped 10% from 36 to 26 last year. His free throw went down from 76 to 69% nice last year. Now, this could all be mental. It could just be his shot form. It could be a little bit of both. It looks like he tried to fix his shot, ruined it, messed up his floater, and just ruined his scoring mentality and his confidence. And he was also one of the older rookies when he got drafted. Already he's 25 years old, so there's only so much time he has left to fix that jump shot and really earn himself some money in a roster spot. But while the Grizz are still running their double big lineups, he's going to be a good backup for Jaren Jackson Jr. Moving on to Jarrett Culver, the reclamation project from the Timberwolves. He can play defense, he can be an energy guy. Hopefully this new change of scenery will help him. Maybe he'll learn how to play basketball. He shot 24% from the three-point line last season. Yikes. And he really showed regression in his sophomore campaign with Minnesota. But the talent definitely is there somewhere, otherwise he wouldn't be taken number 6 overall in his draft class. You can kind of see what they're doing with Zaire, with Jarrett Culver, with Chris Dunn. They're just going for potential. They're saying, all right, if we throw enough darts, somebody's going to be a bullseye. Moving on to John Konkar. He's a decent shooter off the bench, just a really good depth, solid role player if needed. He's like a jack of all trades, master of none. Really good at none, elite at none, but he's a decent player who tries hard and gives you a little bit of everything. Desmond Bane is an absolute stud that they picked up last year. A great three-point shooter, showed some playmaking potential even. He's a strong kid, and I was kind of torn on who they should have given up, Grayson Allen or Desmond Bane. But Desmond Bane did have more team control. He is younger. Hopefully trading away Grayson Allen doesn't bite them in the ass in the future, but he does have starter potential, the ability to stay on the floor, not require the ball to score. Spread the floor for John Morant when he's slashing. I really hope that they move to that JJJ lineup and either D'Anthony Melton or Desmond Bane can come in and be that 2-guard. Moving on to Carson Edwards. He's likely to get cut. Like I said at the beginning of this, there are about 4 players that are going to get cut before the season starts, so they trim the fat down to that 15-man roster. He can get you buckets in college or the summer league, but not in the bigs. In the NBA, he can't shoot, he can't create, and was in the 0th percentile in assist percentage and assist to usage ratio. Jesus Christ. Sam Merrill, the guy who came over in that Grayson Allen trade, likely cut. Daniel Oturu definitely cut in that Patrick Beverley trade. But down here on their 2-way contract is Yves Pons, and I really like this kid's tape. He was a steal being an undrafted pickup for them. He's a really high energy guy, hosted block parties alongside Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer down there in Tennessee. He won't bring you much offensively. He's severely undersized, maybe barely a 6'6" center, but he's really good at defense. He can be a PJ Tucker kind of player, Montrezl Harrell for your team. My blurb on him is this guy is a joy to watch. He'll earn his living being a glue guy, firing up his teammates on effort plays. His offense is rough, to say the least. He has a 3, but it's not great. He has a post game, but it's ugly. His free throw is meh, and his floater is gross. It's basically dunk or bust with Yves, but he hunts offensive and defensive rebounds like no other, willing to box out and elevate over taller guys because he wanted it more. He's a great defender for his size, but obviously he's going to have that same issue Montrezl Harrell does guarding 7-foot guys. He plays great on-ball D, great post D, great help D, and will block anything that comes within a 10-foot radius of him if he can. His hops are uncanny, and he has good enough lateral quickness to guard switches, and when his teammate took a vicious elbow from Florida, he was the first guy to step in and say, you ain't doing that to my teammate. So I really think the Grizzlies are going to be impressed with Yves Pons, and he's going to make it into the rotation at some point in this season. Hot take from me. Moving on to the coach and culture ranking, where they're going to come in at 26. A little bit low, but this is the Memphis Grizzlies. Head coached by Taylor Jenkins. He's a decent coach. I'll probably consider him league average, maybe slightly above. They've got a good thing going here with the clear vision of Ja, Zaire, and hopefully we'll get some major improvements from those guys and the other guys around him this season. One of my big issues, though, is that Grizzlies fans keep saying they have a great development culture here, and I mean, it's not Sacramento Kings bad, but it's not San Antonio Spurs good either. They basically benefited from having the number 2 overall pick, former Rookie of the Year, John Morant. So yeah, their team looks good on paper, but I'm kind of down on the Grizzlies as a whole. Their front office has a vision. Zach Kleiman knows what he wants to do, and I can get behind that. One sole direction that they want to take the team. Whether or not I agree on it is a different story. I'm of the ilk, if you have John Morant, you go all in now. You get yourself a bona fide superstar tandem and let Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant ride. take them all the way to the top. Their team kind of over prioritizes team control, in my opinion. They got rid of Jonas Valanciunas because he's gone after next season. They got rid of Grayson Allen because he's gone after next season. Now, I listen to a lot of Grizzlies fans trying to rationalize the moves, so this is the best I can get from it. Ja Morant is in year 3 of his contract and is the clear-cut cornerstone piece of the franchise. He's on his rookie deal, though, until 2023-2024. The Western Conference, the West, ain't what it used to be and is starting to age out. See LeBron James and, to a lesser extent, the Warriors. So with Jaren Jackson Jr.'s disappointing year last season, the failed experiment of Justice Winslow, and the overall lack of elite partner in crime for Ja, they're looking to compete for the title in a few years, not next year. They're focusing on trading, drafting, and developing guys with huge upside, the highest potential. It doesn't matter how low their floor can be if they're a bust. They're looking to draft a Giannis instead of a Doug McDermott, and they're willing to wait a few years, build up their core, and compete when LeBron loses all of his hair. And I get that. Obviously, Ja needs someone to come along with him, be it Zaire Williams, Dylan Brooks, Anthony Melton, Jaren Jackson Jr., whomever. They just need someone to push this team over the top of, instead of being a nice young Cinderella story play-in team, to legit title contenders. They have some good picks from Utah, LA, and Golden State in the next few years, plus every single one of their picks. So I think if a guy like Jaylen Brown, an elite wing, becomes available, you absolutely jump on that and make the move. Now on to their season projections, where they're going to come in at 40.5 wins, 80-1 championship odds, and 9th seed once again in the play-in tournament. I think that's a little low. Like I said, the West isn't quite what it was before. Ja Morant is obviously coming on to his own, and if anybody comes along for the ride, this team is definitely going to be a lot higher than a 9th seed, than a below 500 team, especially because they were over 500 last season with the struggles of Ja early on the year, with Jaren Jackson Jr.'s regression, with Brandon Clark's regression. So I think the odds makers are sleeping on this Memphis Grizzlies team, and they don't realize how good this team is going to be. So that is the number 15th ranked Memphis Grizzlies. Let me know what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one where we unveil the 14th team.